Welcome, everyone. Just give folks a moment to get into the room. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining. Can you guys hear me? Okay, excellent. Welcome, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Make sure we have enough time for a really wonderful discussion today. So once again, welcome everyone to the actual fifth and final session of PRIME's Accreditation and Ranking Impact webinar series. My name is Sophie Konski, for those that don't know me, and I'm the Manager of Programs and Engagement here at PRIME for the Principles for Responsible Management Education. So this series responds to a growing shift across business and management education, a renewed focus on societal impact, sustainability, and responsible leadership as key components of accreditation and ranking standards. So thank you once again for being with us today. Please do make use of the dedicated Q&A function to engage with the panelists and our team. We welcome your contributions throughout the session today, and we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that if you have any questions or comments for the panelists. For this episode in our series, we're joined by not only a longtime collaborator and peer in the management education space, but a member of the founding task force of PRIME, the Association to Advance Collegiate Schools of Business, AACSB. Today, we will begin to unpack the evolving landscape of accreditations and societal impact in the management education space. As global challenges reshape the priorities of business schools and their stakeholders, accreditation bodies like AACSB are highlighting the importance of values-driven leadership, ethics, and the integration of sustainability in management programs. This session explores how institutions can align their practices with AACSB's educational excellence criteria while drawing on the tools and frameworks offered through PRIME to do so. For example, our sharing information on progress report or the SIP report, as many of you know it. Our expert panel today includes voices from AACSB, the PRIME Secretariat, and a member of our community who bring firsthand experience in accreditation and impact reporting. So together we'll dive into opportunities for using PRIME engagement to support accreditation efforts, enhance program relevance, and showcase excellence in the RME space. So today we're honored to have with us Eileen, Meredith, and Alex. I'd like to invite the panelists to please introduce themselves briefly, and then I'll pass it to Meredith to kickstart this conversation. All right, Meredith, you're first on my screen here. If go ahead.
Thanks, Sophie, and thanks, Zane, who helped organize this from the inside. I had a little laugh when you said, if you don't know me, I'm Sophie. If you're tuning in with us and you don't know Sophie, or if you're watching this as a recorded session and you want to get involved with PRIME, Sophie knows the ins and outs and the recent institutional history. Anything you need to be plugged into, please reach out to Sophie. But for today, you've got me. I'm Meredith Storey. I have a PhD in business education for sustainable development. One thing I love about the session that we have here today is that the three of us are of PRIME originally, that we've come through from PRIME institutions, PRIME signatories, and then come into the roles that we have today. So I'm just very grateful to be here with you all. I am the senior manager of the content and community side of things at PRIME, and really bringing those two together in recent years to make sure that the work that we're doing in pedagogy, curriculum, research, and professional development suit the needs of the various communities that make up the PRIME community, the PRIME Secretariat, etc. So thanks, Sophie.
Eileen.
Thanks, Sophie. My name is Professor Eileen McAuliffe. I am the Executive Vice President for EMEA and also the Chief Thought Leadership Officer for AACSB. In my previous roles, before moving across to AACSB, I was also Dean of a number of UK business schools, as Meredith pointed out, where we were PRIME signatories. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
Me next then, Sophie.
Yeah,
So, hi everyone.
Yes.
It's okay. My name is Alex, Dr. Alex Hope. I'm Deputy Pro Vice Chancellor for the Faculty of Business Law at Northumbria University in the UK. A long association with both AACSB and PRIME. We've been accredited by AACSB for a decade now, 10 years, both accounting and business, dual accounting. And we've also been involved with Prime for a decade as well, and that's not a coincidence. And my own personal involvement, I've been a vice chair of the UK and Ireland chapter. I am still currently the co-chair of the Climate Environment Working Group, and I have a position on the board at Prime. And again, with the AACSB Along Association, and I'm currently the vice chair of the RME affinity group there as well. So hopefully I can bring you some perspectives from my time.
Thank you all for joining us. Meredith, over to you.
Yeah, and on the subject of all of you for joining us, I've had a look through the participants list of everyone who's here right now. There's a lot of names who've joined us throughout the series. So again, you know about the way to ask questions, but I have a feeling that you'll be well informed on questions. But there's also individuals in this in the participants list who could be just as suited to be on the panel here. I see Kathy Dubois' name is listed, and she's one who has had great overlap with both of our organizations. So just to note that we're happy to have everybody who's joining us here today, and please feel free to kind of add your questions or raise hands or anything that you can do to engage with us. So if you've been with us for the other 4 sessions, then you'll know that we run based on like a handful of question topics with questions underneath, but I'm not afraid to leave those questions behind if the conversation is rich enough to just keep going with it, or if there's really pressing questions from the audience that take precedence. So the framework that we'll be going through today, for reference of the audience, is framing the conversation, societal impact, mission alignment, and institutional identity, innovation in learning and leadership development, global mindset, local relevance, and looking forward. So just to begin, I'd like to ask a question around AACSB has long helped define what quality looks like in business education. I mean, I've spent a lot of time learning the standards and the language of the standards at the conference in Denver last year with Stephanie Bryant and her team. The emphasis on quality can really be felt in what you put out as a framework and how that framework is communicated, and then the reactionary levels of quality that the universities put forward. In today's climate of global disruption and societal change, how is that definition evolving? Does it have to evolve? Is it evolving? How do you feel about that? Perhaps first to Eileen.
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. It's a great question to start with. It really is the cornerstone of everything that AACSB is about. So, and I think looking back over a very long career, and many of us in this meeting would have had a very long career associated with striving to be the best, to have the highest level of quality of education for all the learners that we serve and touch. But no longer is it just about academic rigor, which was a real indicator, nor about research output, which of course is as well. So you will have no doubt read, or if you haven't read, I would encourage you to take a look at our recent publication, AACSB's 2025 State of Business Education Report. It's a very, very comprehensive report researched over the last 12 months with significant input from all different stakeholders. So a tremendous piece of work. And I can still say that as quite a new person to AACSB. I think the rigor of that report is phenomenal. But the report itself, the findings from that report would suggest that quality now encompasses a school's ability to adapt, particularly to global disruptions, as we are now seeing, and to not to normalize the experience, but rather to use things like integrating technological advancements, all in the benefit of addressing societal needs. Include things like fostering ethical leadership, promoting community and connectedness, ensuring graduates of whatever level, doctoral, undergraduates, it doesn't really matter, whatever kind of learner you have, ensuring that they graduate with that they're equipped to make meaningful contributions to society around them. So where does AACSB come in with this? So AACSB accredited institutions are expected to demonstrate agility, particularly in their curriculum design. They're expected to demonstrate how they embrace innovative teaching methods. We have different learners that want to learn in different ways. So agility comes into this. And engaging in really impactful research that has a tangible societal impact, that you can really see and evidence that societal impact. So it's an evolution, isn't it? It's not a snapshot today may not look like anything tomorrow or next week or next year, but the evolution and the speed of evolution, it really does reflect a broader understanding that true quality business education must prepare students or learners not just for the marketplace. It's no longer about just that purposeful kind of getting into the marketplace, finding a job, but rather more towards responsible global citizenship and being that responsible global citizen, be it as a leader, be it as a whatever the role that they're taking on and wherever their direction of travel goes. And just to round up, I want to just foster that kind of mindset of agility, that where one starts today as a global citizen may not be where one ends up.
It's really nicely said. Thank you. Alex, anything to add there, please?
Yeah, just to build on, I guess, Eileen's been saying that it has the kind of definition of quality, for want of a better word, it's just evolved over the years. So away from those kind of narrow metrics that we would often have based on, your research productivity or your employability metrics, internationalization. And now it's much more comprehensive. You still have to do those things, of course, but it is more about that impact and how you evidence that impact and that impact on society. And again, same the kind of resulting move towards ethics and responsibility and sustainability. So now when we're judged, and whether that be from accreditation's point of view, whether that be from our rankings of things like the THE impact rankings or QS, or even when we get reviewed in the UK from a government point of view, it's all very much around your contribution to the global challenges and the urgent challenges, and linking explicitly quite often to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, of course. And going even beyond that, again, it's about who you engage with, locally, nationally, internationally, and it's about the quality of that engagement in terms of its authenticity. So, whereas back in the day, again, you might report on how many organizations you have partnerships with, et cetera, how many stakeholders. Now, it's much more about, but what is that relationship bringing? What is the societal impact there? What is the quality of that? What's the quid pro quo? What's the kind of balance of power within that? So it's much more about being able to demonstrate you are transforming your students and transforming the communities that you work with and transforming the academic community. Again, meaningful, measurable impacts on society, whereas before it's much more metric driven. But the two do go hand in hand. So just to give you an example, we're talking today in the UK about the Graduate Futures. It's a survey that happens in the UK about how many students are going into really good jobs and good employability. And what we found in my institution is if you put the two together and you work to ensure your students can be those agile, global, informed citizens, they're more likely to get those decent jobs that they would like to get in the future. So it actually helps you kind of meet some of the old school metrics, if you like, by focusing on the kind of new school metrics. And I think that's a really important thing. And to Annie's point about agility, that is so key nowadays with students. It's about building resilience and the ability to work together, to work cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary. It's about building those kind of attributes rather than just knowledge, which, it used to be, I guess, a bit more.
I really appreciate the references to agility. I had a little bit of a laugh thinking that there's probably nothing less aerodynamic than an ivory tower here. So our systems aren't built for agility in all cases. So both of you have sat in the positions at the top there. How can you create agility in a space that maybe isn't always built to be agile? The systems are in place for quality assurance.
Eileen, you want to go first?
Oh, yeah, I can offer some insight. I think agility is one of the skills that we have to help our learners not be afraid of. They have to be comfortable failing and picking themselves up and trying again. I think agility only comes with a kind of the mindset that it's about the relationships you're building and how you're moving forward, not necessarily just that endpoint and ticking the box and being successful. So it's that broadening experience that we must try and offer our students. So it's things around interdisciplinary that kind of changes the mindset a little bit, and intergenerational approaches. And we can see evidence of this strength in our in AACSB's business community, we see it quite a lot in terms of agility. So, I mean, some call outs that we've got, some good examples from AACSB is our recent BBC Storey Works series, where we shine a light on, you know, the kind of impact of business schools and the learners within the business schools. So, for example, I can give you a really good example. And at the end of it, you'll be thinking, well, so what? You know, but let me give you the example. So UTS in Australia, it's a full-on business school program, but to try and build that agility of mind into the students and into the learners, they're using systems thinking and evidence-based approaches with other disciplines to address solutions in their region around the aging population. So it's really impactful. So I think you can't just rely on the institution's systems, processes, structures to drive agility. You have to reach outside of the framework of quality systems, processes, and reporting. It's not about that. It's about the interdisciplinary, intergenerational thinking, exposure to that, and feeling, you know, focusing more on relationships and the kind of human-centered approaches that we could take, rather than trying to process drive agility into our students' learning experience. It's about reaching outside of the framework, I think, is what I'm trying to say, perhaps not as articulately as I might have done, but I think just from my own experience, I think students are forced through a certain pathway, mainly driven by credits, by assessments, by so on and so forth, when there's a rich world outside there. And you've got to ask yourself, when we're designing assessments or when we're designing degree programs, so what? It's not about a job. It's about what is that person or that learner going to go and do to change society, in my mind. And that's what that's the paradigm shift that we need to make together as a group of organisations that are blessed to be in this position. Alex, I'll hand across to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a really good start. And if I think about it in several different ways, if I think about from an institutional point of view, and you know, universities worldwide, I suspect, but certainly in the UK where we're heavily regulated, it's very difficult to change a tank around, you know, with decades and decades of kind of models, if you like. But we're in a bit of, globally, I think we're in a bit of a crisis. That means that tanker needs to be turned around. So one of the things we're doing here, we're restructuring, we're rethinking those kind of traditional governance and leadership structures, looking at more agile, decentralized decision making, ways of making decisions, flatter models, if you like. You know, the kind of stuff that lots of us would have researched 20 years ago and talked about in organizations. We're starting to kind of bring that on board as academic institutions, which helps. I think there's also think about embedding that culture of innovation and experimentation. And one of our key kind of university strategies here is experiential learning. So every student will leave us with a real world experience, and partnering with local businesses there to kind of bring in real world problems that they're facing, which generally tend to be around, you know, societal challenges and SDG kind of challenges, and students working together to solve those problems or to try to come with solutions, and really having to think about it rather than teaching the knowledge. They have to go away and think about how they'll solve that. That helps a lot. They have to kind of pivot sometimes to a different kind of solution. I think continuing to talk to your communities and your stakeholders and being able to have a bit of strategic foresight is very important. You know, seeing the way that the world is heading and then trying to be proactive rather than reactive to that. You know, we're going to get into a conversation a bit later, I guess, about, you know, DEI and the words, things like that. And, you know, how do we ensure that we kind of keep the kind of keep the underlying aims and impacts, but maybe thinking about it in a different way or a different way of talking about it. So we can see those things coming down the line, and we should be doing that from the start. And I think, I guess we just have to stop being that kind of rigid, tradition-bound structures that we've had and the ways of doing things that we've always done, and really think about how we can use that reset. And to Eileen's point about, you know, getting things done at different levels, I heard the term quite recently, which I really like, which is about having, you know, the institution, the governance, the leadership teams that I work in, that's my operating system. But I also need a second operating system, which works underneath all of that, which is informal. And that's the people that I work with across the departments, across the schools, across the institution, that, I know we'll get things done. I know we'll work together to achieve what we want to achieve without, I guess, the weight of that structure coming down. So the bottom up and the top down meet in the middle, and that helps us to kind of move things forward in a meaningful way too.
I really like that notion of operating system. I could apply that to the standards in some ways, the standards of the operating system. But I think if you look at the way the standards are weighted, you've got standards 1 through 3, which is kind of standard 1 is around leadership and vision, standard 2 and 3 kind of looking at kind of resources, if you like. And then you've got 4 through 7 on teaching and learning, and 8 and 9 on intellectual contributions and societal impact. But if you look at the weighting there, don't you think that we should have less emphasis on business schools turning a profit and more emphasis on capturing, the development of graduates that have been prepared in wonderful schools all around the world to address real societal issues, but to be able to do it at scale? I think we can see it in pockets, but we can't see it at scale, having large scale impact at this point. So I love the notion of an operating system, but maybe if we work together, we can kind of, we've got a standard refresh coming up actually. So now is a great time for us to be hearing all of this feedback to try and build into this. But I think we're doing well, but I think we could do better. And I'd be really keen to hear how we can make large scale impact as a society.
And just to build that, if I can, maybe just thinking about the changes over the years. I've been involved with AACSB and the standards, and I've really seen this kind of move away from if I could be very crude and put it, more of a rules-based to more of a principles-based way of working.
Yes.
And I think that's really, really helpful because there is no one-size-fits-all model. It's okay, what is appropriate in your context. And when I talk to colleagues here when we're writing these documents and we're thinking about our approach to quality, I'm saying, look, as long as we can justify our approach, that's all we need to do. There is no set standard. And we've taken that on board across the university. So we are revising our educational principles. So every university will have a set of principles, which it sets out how you design your programs, etc. And again, we're moving away from what was a much more rules-based approach to a principles approach. So, we might ask academics to say, look, your program has to be designed with internationalization, employability, and sustainability, let's say. But we're not going to tell you how to do that. There are multiple different ways to achieve that. In multiple different contexts, and as long as you can achieve the kind of end result to the principles, that's fine. And what I'm seeing in the university is from staff and from students is that's really refreshing. It's really galvanizing people to say, okay, so I've got to solve the problem, and there was a bit of guidance there, but you're not telling me you have to do it in this way. And I think that's the kind of standards, if you like, for want of a better way, that I really appreciate, and I think that's what's going to move us forward.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you got it spot on, Alex. It is principle based. There's a home for everyone. Everyone has their own narrative, their own story, their own journey, and it is a very, very inclusive organization in that regard. So it's wonderful, and everyone finds a place, and it never ceases to amaze me that so many people I meet say, well, we don't do what they do over there. And it doesn't matter. It's your definition of you. It's what your DNA is telling you. So, and that's the story you need to share, how you create impact. So really spot on.
Wonderful. This leads perfectly to our next question here. And Eileen, it's written in a way that I think implies that you sit around reading the submissions, but I don't mean it at all like that, from the conversations that you've been having here. So beyond the traditional strengths like those research outputs and the evidences of globalization, what new dimensions such as societal impact, responsible leadership, lifelong learning examples like those brought up here are becoming central to accreditation expectations or make for an exemplar submission when you what piques your interest really when you think about schools that are working towards transformative change here?
Yeah, well, it kind of harks back to the previous conversation, really. It's those that aren't focusing on turning a profit, those that aren't focusing on machine mills of degree qualifications and so on and so forth. It's those that can demonstrate in a really kind of illustrative way tell their story, almost, it's like jumping off the page, and we bring these things to life ourselves when we see the reports come in. We meet the schools at their peer review visits and so on. And when you meet and hear the stories, you just think we've got to replay this. Everyone in the world needs to hear this story. So we've got some great examples. The Australian example was one I gave you. We have more examples around in Pakistan. We have a sort of social enterprise example where a women's conference has taken place. There's just so many to mention that we we would be here all day, really. But it is reimagining kind of, and the quality is still there. It's always there. It's always ingrained in it. But it's a way of demonstrating the learning in an experiential way that is meaningful to that society.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I can maybe give you some examples from my institution too, actually. So it's all about, yeah, what is your society? What is your mission? What is your societal impact going to be? And that will be different everywhere. And we're very clear at Northumbria on what ours is. We were the journey that we've been on, we were mid-ranking post 92, as they call them, university in the UK. And over the last 10 years, we moved right up into the kind of upper quartile, if you like, top 20 on research power. So we're up there with those really kind of prestigious universities in terms of the amount of research to do, the power that has. But our student demographic hasn't changed, and that's on purpose. We still have 40% of our students that come from that kind of those social demographic areas, which are first university or relatively poor areas, and students who commute to us, rather than. So we have a very specific kind of student, and what we do is we say we're taking those students and we're educating them in a world class, research rich university, which they wouldn't be able to access in otherwise. And so that's our regional impact. So we think, okay, so how does that impact on us as a business school, and what do we do? And so we have our business clinic here at at Newcastle Business School. So we take groups of students in their final year, whether that be masters or undergraduate, and we put them together and we get them to work with an organization, usually a third sector charitable organization or a small organization that doesn't have the resources to do the work that they want. And they will work on a real world problem for them. And it could be a sustainability problem, or it could be a problem like we do quite a lot of stuff on small manufacturers who want to move into a new international market. We do a lot of stuff like marketing plans for local charities. And that gives the students that experiential learning, working with a real client, if you like, but it also builds that value in our local community for those clients who couldn't access that kind of consultancy anywhere else. And so for us, our societal impact is not always just around kind of sustainability and an ethics, responsibility, sustainability point of view. It's around our local economy. It's around building that economy, an inclusive economy. It's helping those kind of organizations flourish and grow. So building the community. And that's the story that we tell when people like AACSB come and talk to us, and and it always goes down really well, because you can come, you can taste it, you can feel it, you can speak to their students, say, what is the impact you're having? And I say, when I'm working, with an immigrant community on a small charity that's working up the road there and helping them with some advice on how to build, etc., etc. And so for me, that's the real societal impact, the stuff you can see and taste and smell, rather than something you've written which may have been used somewhere at some time. It's actually on the ground, boots on the ground kind of societal impact.
Very good. And that brings us to societal impact then, doesn't it? And it's interesting with the terms like lifelong learning and with the local economies evidence and things that you've shown there, that the word that hasn't been said but has been described is community. And in the recent language of AACSB, community has become the language. So just to touch a moment upon the AACSB standards shift in the language of DEI and bringing in the community and connectedness components, which do have a similar ethic, but a different language there. How does AACSB support institutions that want to maintain that strong commitment to inclusive excellence within the new framework?
So, well, first of all, we've had these standards, the current standards since 2020, when we included societal impact at that point. So that's been 5 years or so now. And I suppose that was a deliberate action to bring that in. So, and we've we've provided many opportunities for learners to come to our workshops and listen to, great speakers around societal impact. And indeed, there's the Societal Impact AACSB Day in New York as part of RME Week. But when we're digging into community and connectedness, which is, I think, where you're wanting to go, Meredith, I mean, we had a particular situation in the US where some terms had become politicized, and we felt that we weren't really able to use those anymore. But in terms of the spirit of what AACSB does in community and connectedness, hasn't changed. It hasn't changed at all. And we've had many webinars and workshops and so on over the last kind of 6 to 8 weeks. And I've sat in front of many audiences, and they've thought there's been a real shift from one thing to another. There has not. There has not been. AACSB has never been more committed to community connectedness, to DEI. If you are in a member school across the globe, whatever your mission is and your mission aligned, you carry on doing it, and we support you and celebrate you. It's just a particular situation where we are at the moment. And these difficult situations occur all over the globe, as we all know. And the best thing about AACSB, one of the best things, is it is a community. We're a community of peers, and we are supported through volunteer network that stand together in solidarity with all our members, no matter what time or difficulty they're having. So we haven't changed our standards. We have had to change some of the wording for particular reasons. I don't really need to go into that anymore, to be honest. We've talked about it a lot. But what we do say is we don't change the way we value or accredit our schools in any way, shape, or form. It's exactly the same as it was this time last year. We encourage all the schools in our network to stay true to their mission. Their mission is their contribution to their society as they define it, and it hasn't changed one bit. And AACSB maintains such a strong commitment to inclusive education. It is never going to shift, and it has not shifted. And going forward, we have, as I said, we had a variety of sessions where we've had all kinds of challenges or questions or this or that. We've been in the press a lot, and that's a good thing, because we are able to stand up proudly and say we are AACSB and we still believe in inclusivity, diversity, and inclusion. Nothing has changed, but we have had to change the way we describe some terms in a particular market at the moment for a particular reason. But as a community, we have not changed. It's the language really that we've had to change, and we will continue to support our network. And what's been really just an absolute pleasure and honor to watch, and a privilege, is the way the community of AACSB has stood up together and has stood up to support each other. And we will continue to do this, and we will continue to support our network through regular communications, and speaking engagements, or anything anyone wants, and lots of ongoing professional development opportunities as we go through. I don't know how much more strongly I can impress upon the audience that we are where we are. It's not where we might want to be, but we are still fully committed, and we're a global community, and we stand together, and with organizations such as PRIME standing beside us, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I can comment on that. So yeah, I see that, I hear that, what Eileen's saying, and not to be flippant about it, it doesn't worry me. It doesn't change anything that we do as an accredited school. As somebody was saying to me recently, saying, well, this change, does that mean we'll have to change everything? Does that mean that we are no longer standing up for those kind of rights? I say, well, no. I mean, if you think about PRIME, you look at PRIME, DEI is not mentioned anywhere in any of the PRIME principles, but it's implicit in everything that PRIME does, and I see it kind of as part of the values that we bring. And so it's implicit in what we do. Again, the SDGs, there's no specific mention of DEI together with in that particular format of words. It's just words. It's the values, the commitment, the underlying kind of behaviors that are important. thinking about, my area of research, responsible business, and sustainability, we don't talk so much about CSR anymore. That's kind of gone out the window a little bit. It's more ESG, and so terminology changes over time. And if we're changing the terminology away from DEI for whatever reason that might be, it might have changed anyway from the evolution. Then, it doesn't necessarily change what you do. So again, in the UK, most of us, or many of the business schools, will be signatories to things like like the Athena Swan awards, who talks about diversity and gender diversity, or Stonewall, which is about LGBTQ, etc. Whether that be our commitment to decolonizing the curriculums, the race equality charter. So that is not going to change. That is who we are. That is what we do. How we articulate that through our AACSB report might be different. And actually, I don't mind the word community, because for me, community is an all-encompassing word. It means everybody. And that's every member of our community, from whatever background, whatever gender, whatever they want to do. So as far as we're concerned, there's no change there. Having said all of that, I do understand that people get nervous about these things. And I think our role as leaders, just as Eileen's articulated there, is to have that conversation, have that dialogue on a daily basis, really kind of show that you're open to that. But at the end of the day, it's not about the words; it's about the behaviours that you exhibit. And I think that's the approach I like to take. If we can exhibit those behaviours, then the wording doesn't matter at all. So
Yeah, I agree with you totally, Alex. I mean, it's in some ways that the narrative and the conversations have happened, and we're coming through, but now it's time to show the actions, and we see those actions through the reports that are submitted, through the visits, through the conference expositions, through things like BBC Story Works. It is time to stand up and show the action rather than talking about it all the time. Move on,
yeah,
and
and
let's look at the actions.
Yeah, and I think to some respects, I often think about, again, like, I've done a lot of work, critical work on CSR, and CSR with kind of reality and the rhetoric. And you get the same with DEI. The reality and the rhetoric are different. You'll see organizations that make very clear, explicit DEI kind of statements, and it'll be in their mission, it'll be in their values, but you don't actually see it happening through it. And so actually, it's not about ticking a box that says we have a policy on DEI. It's about, these are the things that we do. And one of the things that we try to do really well here, because of those other things that we do, is documenting all of the actual behaviors. And the SIP report is a great example of that. In the Prime Commons now, if we can document all of the work that we do that kind of speaks to that kind of our values in that direction, then again, it's very easy when people come to say, well, what are you doing on DEI, race equality, or this and that, to say, well, actually, here we are. We've got that there, and we've got evidence of that. We've put it all together. And for me, that's much more important than having an explicit statement on DEI, because that's just words.
And we do have that appreciation. I mean, sitting in an office in New York City, you see it every day around you, just the feeling that comes with the conversation, like the idea to have more conversations is absolutely relevant to our communities and to the communities around us. And Eileen, perhaps maybe just to come back to in your first two answers, just really praising the values of agility within the systems that exist within business schools, but to see that agility in the AACSB response and in the conversations that you've all been willing to kind of engage our community and wider communities. And it's been, I mean, we all kind of took that collective deep breath when the announcement first came, but to see the conversations happening and to have conversations like this really does kind of bring a greater sense of connectedness to the communities that we do have. So I might just pause there if anyone wants any final words on that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, the community and connectedness, the community is, on one level, it's the wider community, the accrediting bodies, the member schools, organizations such as Prime, UNESCO, all of these great organizations that stand together. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's about the learners and their experiences and the future leaders that we hope we're educating to come out of our schools and make a societal impact at the end of the day. And I don't think anyone can stop us from doing that if we all stand together and move forward with it. And I think I said it just a few moments ago, inclusivity in action now. That's what we need to see. We need to stand up and show those examples of where it is all over the world. We need to see it all over the world, all shapes and sizes of institutions. Something really small in one part of the world compared with something really big in a developed part of the world. they have equal opportunity for impact, significant impact, and we need to be capturing that and showcasing it. And as I said, expositions such as the week in June, the first week in June with you guys in New York, is a tremendous opportunity to start showing some of these phenomenal contributions.
Alex, did you have anything you wanted to add there? Or you see your
I was just thinking, it's if we didn't have a truly inclusive school, we wouldn't have any students, frankly, and we wouldn't have any good staff because people would not want to come. They're not coming because of kind of any explicit statements they've got. They're coming for the community that we built here. And when people come and they join us and they visit us on whether that be students coming for visitor days, open days, whether that be staff coming and thinking about joining us, they get the vibe, they get the feeling, and they understand that actually, as a community, this is something they want to be part of.
Well, if we could move from one hot issue of our times to another one. In the intro here, Eileen, I know you had mentioned something that sounded like it was a reference to the use of AI in the classroom. I'm trying to find it in my notes because you used a beautiful system that wasn't actually saying that at all, but could kind of read between the lines. And the internet integrating societal advancements in the classroom, there is how I think you placed it. So we know that innovation and learning is something that's being faced in the classroom on a regular basis, that teachers are going in and knowing the skills that we as educators have, but also the skills, resources that the students have available to them. So we're moving beyond just those traditional lectures and cases. What kinds of pedagogical innovations are standing out in AACSB right now, particularly those that foster ethical leadership, creativity, and systems thinking there?
Yeah. This is the most exciting, well, it's one of the most exciting areas, isn't it, really? The rapid pace of change in this area is phenomenal. And of course, our learners, the certain age group are just hungry for this. They move at such a pace, they digest things at such a pace. So there's the kind of innovations, pedagogical innovations that have stood out, really quite remarkably are those that perhaps not typically simulate things like ambiguity, complexity, and ethical tension. Because if you look around the world today, look at the ambiguity we're looking for leaders to lead in, and it's incredibly complex. The kind of geoeconomics, the geopolitics, it's incredibly, and then to operate in that environment with an ethical compass that will always bring you back to center is the real world. And that isn't perhaps where our pedagogy sat maybe 2 years ago, 5 years ago, certainly not 10 years ago. And this is the environment that future leaders will operate in. This is where they operate in. So a few other kind of interesting things. So we've got quite a powerful trend is that we've noticed in a lot of the submissions and a lot of the work we've picked up is around challenge-based learning. So it's real time, real life. Again, students are collaborating across disciplines. So it's not singular discipline, but multidisciplinary. And they're solving live problems. Alex talked about the business clinics at Northumbria. They're a great example of this. But they're looking outside of typical business problems. It's not just business problems, it's business problems within a context. So, for example, business problems that sit within climate risk, for example, or algorithmic bias or food security. At one of my previous institutions, we worked very hard on food security, and well, food insecurity is now an issue, of course, but it's not looking at things through a single lens, not in isolation, but rather through systems thinking. So look at the connectedness of the people, not design thinking where you're looking at the process and trying to come up with a solution, but rather it's systems thinking where you are looking at the connectedness and the human connectedness. And you get that very clearly when you go out of your discipline and set into a context, because we are educating business school graduates, but they are business school graduates that would have to operate in any one or any number of different environments. It's not necessarily all going to be Wall Street, just to take your point of being in New York at this stage, so and they're not hypothetical cases. This isn't theoretical on AACSB's part. This is these are exemplars we've seen where they've been in partnership with communities, real deep community practice, or NGOs, or mission-driven firms. There are an increasing number of those. So we see a lot of schools that are using immersive technology to this end. So VR-based ethical simulations. I know in my old school we were just moving into this as well. But what's really interesting is they're not being deployed in such a way as to get from A to B to C, but rather reflective tools to help cultivate empathy, so empathetical kind of considerations and ethical reflexes in a ways that textbooks could never do this. So they could give you the knowledge, learn the knowledge, pass an assessment. They could never test how human you were when you did that, or how emotional, or what your behavioral empathy was as you went through it. And then if you take it to schools that we would identify perhaps, or have stood out as transformational schools, these are ones that are embedding design thinking, a lot of reflective practice. I mentioned at the beginning failure analysis, or the ability to fail and learn from it, into the curriculum. And what this is building in young people is resilience. It's not having that fear of failure, but it's curriculum based. It's not something that I know over the years I've heard, well, these are your theoretical modules over here, your courses that you'll take for your curriculum, and then over here we're going to do some skills based. It's not that anymore. That kind of just gives it lip service, doesn't it? Now it's more deeply embedded in everything you learn, and it's how you connect with your peers wherever they are, and this kind of pedagogy is one that evidences real sparks in creativity, and it just normalizes that we as humans interacting with each other appreciate. And it's not a kind of a binary transactional relationship between you and I, let's say, Meredith, but it's an iterative approach where we would focus on human-centered leadership and work more closely together. And I think it's a really interesting pedagogic paradigm shift that I'm seeing. And as I said, the creativity that comes with this is phenomenal. So it's almost like the nuts and bolts of the knowledge are almost secondhand. It's more about you as an individual and how you synthesize everything you're learning. Got one, before I hand across to Alex, got one really good example of Hofstra in New York. You may know them. Amazing innovative approach to learning using VR. And it can be seen again on the BBC Storyworks Leader Generation series, but it's not teaching learners what to think, but it's empowering students to ask things like, what kind of leader do I want to be? What for what kind of world? So I think it's much more reflective, much more introspective, and it's encouraging these kind of skills at a much earlier age in a learner's journey than perhaps we would have ever seen before. And when you balance alongside the speed at which learners are learning technology, there's an impatience of them to race through technological kind of learning because the technology is there to support that. And then there's the kind of human-centered leadership kind of approach coming alongside. So I always look at it and I think it's almost like a balancing scales. You've got the hunger and the pace of the technology, but you've got to let your body and your maturity as a leader catch up and develop. So there's a few examples there. I hope I haven't gone on too long. So Alex, across to you.
Yeah, just again to build on what Eileen started, I guess. Yeah, for us, it's all about experiential learning, project-based learning, challenge-based learning, also place-based learning. So if I kind of bring all those together, and I'll address the AI bit specifically because they all kind of go together. It's not about teaching knowledge anymore in a vacuum. It's about teaching that systems thinking in terms of here is a challenge, a real world challenge, getting somebody from industry to come and talk to students and set that challenge, set the students a way to kind of find a way to try to kind of address that challenge, come back, work again with the live kind of industry practitioner to deliver that. So it's real world learning. It's the kind of thing they'll do in the real world, when they go into a job, if you like. But it's in that sandbox where they can be safe and they can experiment and they can try different ways and they can feel their way through it. So again, some examples from what we're doing. We're building an experiential learning hub, if you like, at the university, right at the center of the university, where we will be gathering in those challenges, working with industry, third sector, public sector, also internationally as well, and then using those to kind of farm out to kind of schools to work across together to kind of solve those challenges. We are restructuring as an organization. My own faculty will be acquiring, if you like, a design school and a sociology and humanities department, which gives us the ability to be able to work across in much more efficient ways than we ever could across faculties. The business clinic I talked about earlier, so that was traditionally for business students. We're expanding that out. We're looking to grow that in terms of offering that opportunity to every student in our university. We have about 33,000 students. And so I'll give you an example. We're working with a local castle, believe it or not, up in rural Northumberland here, who came to us wanting a business and marketing about how they could improve. Turned out that they never had any kind of mapping done, any archaeological work done. So we're working with our history department to do some work there. Then we're working with the geography students as well to kind of, so we're bringing all of those students together. And then photography students who are using drones to fly over the top of the castle to take those kind of photos for a marketing campaign. So you're getting all of these kind of students together, working together, cross-discipline, kind of help a particular a small kind of rural charity to promote the work that they're doing. That helps us with the AI problem. So the AI problem people often talk about, it's not a problem as far as I'm concerned, is, well, students will just be using AI to regurgitate assessments. Well, of course they will, if your assessment allows them to regurgitate from AI. If you're asking the traditional essay question that we were even 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, then that's what happens. It's no different to me than when students used to use essay mills and they pay somebody to kind of do their work for them. It's the same thing. So what you've got to do is you've got to create those authentic learning experiences that AI cannot solve, and then allowing them to use the AI to do the work that it can do. So for instance, the AI cannot go and kind of take those photos of that particular castle. It cannot go and speak to the stakeholders. It cannot go and work with the kind of project managers there. But what it can do is it can take the kind of learnings that you've had from that, help you kind of develop some concepts for maybe marketing plans and develop. It can do that work for you. And you can use it as a tool, as a buddy. One of my academic friends likes to say he's got a PhD, he's got a postdoc in his pocket with his AI. He's a physicist, and he can ask his AI postdoc student to go and do a bit of work, and he can come back and he can work on that. So that's how students are going to use AI in the future in the workplace. That's essentially how we're going to do that. And as responsible manager educators, if we're not teaching students how to use AI in an authentic, correct, ethical way, then we are not being responsible. So again, for us, it's about making those real world experiences, those cross-working, that experiential learning, that systems thinking, then using AI in the appropriate way as a sidecar to kind of go with you on that journey. That answers the question a bit.
Fantastic. And at Prime, we've been working with the Lego Foundation and the Lego education side of things to try to bridge creativity for the last 3 or 4 years. And so some of the challenges that we've run into are just, when the original grant was written, we wanted it to be for student skills development. But as it came along, we realized, there's educator skills that need to be brought along, confidence that needs to be built. This isn't, you could have gotten your tenure in a world where things were the same 5 years ago as they were when you crossed that bar. But now it seems like things are moving a mile a minute. So I have a question in there, but I'd also like to get to the last question. So Alex, if there's anything you want to comment on.
I was just going to say, I can hear your question in there. And the biggest challenge we have is on our students, it's our faculty, because, faculty would have done their learning a long, long time ago, in a lot of cases, or in a different way. So the way we bridge that in, we use, actually, you'll be aware of the Chartered Association of Business Schools in the UK. We use their Chartered Management and Business Educator scheme, which we sign our staff up to, which then commits them to doing continuous professional development to keep their educator status. And we find that a really useful driver to say, hey, as a professional academic, your job is to keep up to date with the kind of what's coming down the line. But here is a way that will help you do that. We'll help you do that. We'll fund you to do that. We'll put you through that. And we find that's really, really helpful as a way to kind of help our faculty to improve and grow themselves.
Eileen, anything you want to add, or should I move to the final question there?
No, I think if No, I mean, I'm really happy to move to the final question. I think we've said a lot on that particular area, haven't we? It's been great.
Well, it's not totally unrelated. So just in thinking for the future, and we've described a lot of the changes along the way, and really that this is all in benefit of student skills and the future we want, and you know, that shared sense of self. So as we look towards the future of business education, what attributes will distinguish the top performing schools, not just in rankings, but in relevance to society?
Shall I go first, Meredith? Yeah.
Please, thank you.
Jump on in. Okay, so the schools that, I mean, I mean, it's a very open question, so you'll get a very open answer, which might just come at it from a couple of different angles. In my view, the schools that will lead into the next era, they won't just teach business. They will redefine its role in society, really. That's the fundamental position that I think they need to take. And what will set them apart, it's not the prestige of the rankings alone, but rather what their purpose is, how adaptable they are, agile, and how courageous they are. I think we all admire the kind of courageous schools. I could give you a good example of one that I would class as courageous at the moment is University of East London. Their particular demographic is a very low socioeconomic background, but they are doing some tremendous work there. And one good example is, you know, they've been recognised in the rankings. They've moved up 45 places in one of the various ranking tables in the UK. But when you go and visit them and you see the work they're doing, it's incredible. And they are a good example of a school that is embedding societal impact at its core. So not as a side initiative. And they're using it as a strategic driver of the curriculum, of the research and partnerships that they form. And they stick with that at their mission. I think something else that the future success will be looking at is kind of model agility. I mentioned agility a couple of times. So continually rethinking their learning models, credentialing, how they make tech integration equitable, because they can integrate tech, but it has to be equitable and accessible by all learners. And we see some of that tech poverty sometimes popping up now. And that has to continually evolve to meet learners' needs. And then I think most critically, and of this piece, and then I've just one more point is, critically is that the leaders we're developing, they're not only competent in their skills, but they've got a conscience as well, so that they are capable of navigating, as I said, you know, the complexity of the kind of world of ethics. They're empathetic and they've got systems thinking, so looking at the human connections. And to build that for the future, they've got to stop looking at innovation as a reactionary tool. Innovation is a means to everything else. It's a means to impact. It's no longer a thing. It's a means to impact, I would say. So the kinds of things I would say, and I'm no expert. I mean, here am I kind of sitting here in this. What did you use? Ivory tower earlier on, I think, at one point in our conversation. And I'm really not. I'm the most down-to-earth person that you'll meet. But I think we've got to invest in faculty development, inclusive leadership pipelines, and mission-aligned experimentation would be really, really a fresher breath air to see. And treating change not as a threat, but as a responsibility, not an opportunity. It's a responsibility. And a couple of the things that I'd be amiss if I didn't mention would be the way that we look at teaching impact and research impact. You know, at the moment, research impact is very much measured on traditional, you know, scholarly outputs and so on and so forth. I think at AACSB, we really are looking at strength on societal impact and how we measure that. I'm leading a project at the moment called the Global Research Impact Task Force, which is an eclectic selection of 10 of the most learned academic societies, so Academy of Management, AAA, and so on and so forth. They've all come together quite miraculously around the same table, and we all have the same problem, which is the perceived lack of measurement of impact. And is impact only by citations? And there's quite a nice conversation at the moment, and you will hear more about the outputs from this project at our Dean's Conference in October. but there's quite a good conversation at the moment about the way tenure and promotions are awarded in universities, and is there space in that kind of area for an impact field as well to be considered when considering through things like promotion and tenure? Because unless we change that, the generations of academics coming up after us, that's really where we need to be aiming, so that they're not blindsided by citations and outputs and so on, but rather they see that as a means to impact and creating impact for good. So now I'll get off my box and stop talking, but thank you so much.
I see Sophie's here, so that means we're at time, but I would like to pass to Alex for one final word on that as well.
Yeah, last word and keep it brief. What Eileen said, I guess, yeah, it's about explicitly and effectively integrating social impact, responsibility, sustainability, ethical practice into everything that we do, and then we position ourselves as leading schools as transformative rather than reactive institutions where we do that. And I happen to believe that that is actually a forward-looking strategy that will actually improve my school in the rankings anyway, because that's the direction of travel. So giving away my secrets here, if we can do that and we can do that as an early adopter, then I know that will pay off for me down the line.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both. And Alex, thank you for sharing your secrets. Eileen, thank you for having the difficult conversations with us. It's been a joy to be here with both of you. And Sophie, I'll hand it back to you for the final wrap up, but just my thanks for this wonderful conversation today.
Thank you, Meredith.
That's it. Thank you so much, Alex, Eileen, Meredith, for your contributions today, to the audience for listening in, and to those that have been attending all of our sessions in this series. It's been a joy and we've gained some really wonderful insights. So looking forward to continuing the conversation both online and offline at Global Forum. And that is all. Thank you so much. Wishing you a lovely rest of your day and evening wherever you are. Bye.